everybody, I'm Grandmaster Ben Finegold here with our weekly lecture series. We have a great player of the past today, Carl Schlechter. His Wikipedia article isn't as long as it should be. Maybe I'll add to it. Want to thank our sponsor who decided to remain anonymous. Thanks, Anonymous. Anonymous sponsors a lot of lectures. If you'd like to sponsor a lecture, contact my wife Karen. Her information's on the screen now. And you can sponsor a lecture on whatever subject you want to sponsor a lecture on. Schlechter was born at the turn of the century, or lived during the turn of the century. He lived from 1874 to 1918, and he was born in Vienna, one of the best Austro-Hungarian chess masters and theoreticians. Not only did he play chess, but he actually contributed a lot to chess theory and openings and writings. He only started playing chess at the age of 13, and then he played in a lot of tournaments and did really well, played matches. He was known as the drawing master because he had a lot of draws, although we're not going to see any draws today, some of his better games. And more importantly, he played a match with Lasker for the World Championship in 1910, and after 9 games, Schlechter was up 1 win with 8 draws, and it's still argued today whether he needed to win the last game or not. Some people claim Schlechter needed to win by 2 points to get the title, and some people claim that's not true. So I don't know. But in the last round of the match, Schlechter was winning, and then he was drawing, and then he ended up losing. And as a consequence, Lasker, by tying the match in the last game, retained his title. Otherwise, Schlechter would have been world champion. Although, it would have been more interesting if the game was a draw, so we would know the rules of the match, whether he gets the title in that case, which obviously he would deserve. There was a Viennese chess school started by Schlechter and 2 other people, Arthur Kaufmann and Hugo Friedrich, and founded by Max Weiss, who was also a strong player. And then the writing I was talking about, Schlechter prepared the 8th and final edition of the famous Handbuch des Schachspiels Chess Openings Treatise, published in 11 parts between 1912 and 1916, over 1,000 pages, and have lots of chess information in just 1 volume. A lot of openings are named after Schlechter. Schlechter Gambit and the Birds, the Schlechter variation of the French defense, the Schlechter variation of the Slav, which I play with black, and the Schlechter variation of the Danish Gambit, which everybody plays. That's the most common way of playing for black. So, unfortunately, and I didn't know this until I was reading the articles today, he had a lot of trouble financially making a living as a chess player, even though he was top 5 in the world. And he died very young at the age of 44 of pneumonia and starvation. So that's unfortunate. He's buried in Budapest a few days after he died. So that's unfortunate, ending for a great chess player to die of starvation and to be sick. Anyway, you can read more about Schlechter in Wikipedia. I have the article up. There's a picture of him. And when I was a kid, I was brought up in a chess family. So my dad would talk about the old masters a lot, and who his favorites were and stuff. And we would talk about Schlechter and, how he should have won the world championship and he was winning the last game and stuff like that. So, okay, let's get to the games. Okay, first game is Carl Schlechter's White against Walter John. This was played in 1905. This is a good example, I think, of Schlechter's play. He gets a positional advantage. He squeezes his opponent, and his opponent really has nothing to do the whole game. So it's sort of an embarrassing game for black because black never had any counterplay. It was just getting squeezed. So black played the Dutch by transposition. Got Stonewall Dutch. Interesting because we've recently had a lecture on the Stonewall for white. Now we get to see the Stonewall for black. You can see Schlechter develops his pieces unlike his opponent. Bishop d6. We could take the bishop or play g3, played e3, which is just as good. He wants to take back with the pawn on f4 so he can solidify his control of the e5 square. And so black decides not to take the bishop until later. Again, we could take on d6, which is probably what I would do, but he played g3, which is also okay. And you can see black doesn't have good development here of the queen side. And in particular, the bishop on c8 is quite poor. And a lot of times, black will play b6 and get the bishop out this way, or swing the bishop over to h5. Both are a little time consuming. Black played knight e4, forgetting about his queen side. Queen b3, white has everything out. King h8, getting off of this diagonal. Rook c1, putting the rook on the same file as the queen. Some tactical traps now could happen. Bishop takes f4. And in this position, you know, we could take either way and have a good position. But he took with the e-pawn, which is safer for white's king. White's king has a lot of pawns in front of it. The g-file's not open. So e takes f4 is more safe. And again, white has everything developed, and black still has the queen side, you know, sitting where it shouldn't be. And also the queen is misplaced on the same file as the white rook. Queen f7, he must have heard me. Knight e5. Queen went to e7. That's a strange maneuver to play queen f7, then queen e7, instead of just playing queen e7 in one move. I guess that's why I've never heard of black. Bishop takes e4, getting rid of the only good piece for black. And then f3, opening up the e file, making it half open, and giving black an backward e pawn, blocking the bishop. Didn't take back right away, played rook e1, takes back when he wants to. And you can see black doesn't have a lot of counterplay. Black can't do very much, and black has this perpetually bad bishop on c8. We can't get our bishop around to h5 now, because if you play bishop d7, you're hanging your b pawn. So he played queen c7. I guess he wanted to get his pieces out, but wants his pawn defended. Queen a3, threatening the rook with checkmate. King g8. Finally, Schlechter wins his pawn back. And you can see white has a monster advantage with weak e-pawn, bad bishop, no development for black, and white has everything out and ready to go, and knight on e5, really well placed. Knight a6, b3, c5, cementing white's space advantage on basically the center and the queen side, and soon the king side. Queen b2, getting the queen back over to the regular part of the board, not on the side. And finally, white advances on the king side with g4. White's winning on the queen side, the center, and the king side, and black's bishop is forever bad. Threatening queen takes h7 checkmate. b4, winning on all sides of the board. White's in no hurry, maneuvering the knight around to better square. And g5 wants to play knight g4 and either knight f6 or knight h6. But basically, black is a piece down because that bishop is just useless. Having said that, the knight's also useless. So very poor position for black. Knight h6. And black just can't move. If this was two grandmasters today, black would be quite embarrassed. Queen e5, You can see white dominates the board. Black is just on the first and second rank, and his second rank piece is pinned. Terrible. Black wants to trade queens. White says, that's fine, as long as I can enter the position here. Now, if we trade on f6, the rook is trapped. You're going to have to lose the exchange at least, and you're left with your poor bishop. So he traded queens, and it's pretty rare to see a position as poor as this for black, with the bishop completely blockaded, and black has no active play at all. Finally, black tries to get some activity, but nope. Takes with a pawn, getting a passed pawn. Puts the knight back on e5, check. Now we're threatening knight takes bishop and f7 check. So rook d8 is forced. White moves his king up. Black can't do anything. And then rook b1 to play b5 and b5. And black's had enough. So white never won any material this game, although if the game had gone 3 or 4 moves more, then white would have won a lot of material. White's crashing through on the b line, and once white plays rook b7, which is possible to stop, then black's position collapses and he loses everything. So a really nice strategical win from Schlechter. That seems more like a game that was played today where like Magnus Carlsen's white and he's giving a simul against like a 1400 player. This is how it would look. Or if he was playing me, either way. So black defended and didn't lose any material, but black never had any activity, and white can win by infiltrating on the b file or by infiltrating with his king, and black just can't move. Black has no legal moves. So excellent game from Schlechter, and I think this shows his style more than the other games where he's taking away his opponent's counterplay, increasing his advantage, and not giving his opponent any counter chances. And as a consequence, black was completely crushed. Okay, next game, Schlechter's black. And he's playing against Bernhard Fleissig. This was a casual game played in Vienna in 1893. White played b4. And I don't know if this is the most exciting game. Maybe the last game is the most exciting game. But this game is different than the first game. You can see Schlechter get some tactics going. e6, attacking the pawn. Bishop b2. Black isn't possible to take the pawn because bishop takes g7 would win the rook in the corner. So black plays knight f6. White defends his pawn with a3. Black attacks the pawn again. White pushes. Black gets a nice center. d4 is a very strange move. Queen a5 check is a fork, forking the king and the pawn. So white, if he doesn't want to lose the pawn, is forced to play knight c3 to defend the pawn. Knight e4, attacking the knight. Queen d3 is forced. Takes on d4. Queen takes is forced. Bishop c5, starting a tactical melee, which is good for the lecture. And there's a city in Europe which once a year has a live chess game where the pieces are human beings. I've actually participated in one of those games in St. Louis. I was one of the captains. I was playing against Hikaru. Somehow our team lost. And they use this game as the game where the live chess people move every year. You can see that on the Wikipedia article, exactly the city and the year. And started in 1954. This is the game that they chose for the humans to play. Okay, so queen g7 attacking the rook. Bishop f2 check. King d1's forced. Now, black played a very surprising move. If I was playing, I would play rook f8. You couldn't get me not to play rook f8, but then the game wouldn't be so interesting. Schlechter played d4, sacrificing his rook with check. So the guy took the rook with check. Now, we can't move the knight like knight takes knight because queen e1 is checkmate. So the knight can't move, so black's going to get the knight back and start a big attack on white's king. First, white took some more pieces. Queen takes c8. Takes on c3. White is up a rook, but white's king is a little iffy. Bishop c1. Black said, I haven't sacrificed enough yet, and played knight d7, sacrificing his other rook. That's how they did it in the 1800s. They sacrificed one rook with check, then they sacrificed their other rook. White said, okay, I'll be up 2 rooks. Sounds good. Queen takes b5. Now, black is threatening queen d5 check. Queen d5 check's good. We have to do something about that. Now, if you play e3 with the idea of blocking with the bishop, which is a good idea, unfortunately, I take the bishop with checkmate. So e3 doesn't work. So what does work? How do we stop queen d5 check? Good question. Okay, white played bishop f4. He gave his king the c1 square. Queen check, king c1. So now white is up 2 rooks. Although I was going to say black has a pawn, but black does not have a pawn. So white is up exactly 2 rooks. Bishop e3 check, because black hasn't sacrificed enough material yet. Bishop takes e3, knight f2. So this is amazing. That's why he played bishop e3. He wants to play queen d1 checkmate. Okay. And if you take the knight, then I eventually checkmate you on c2. So knight f2 threatens queen d1 mate. And that's how the game ended. If you play king to b1, always play king b1. You don't play queen d1 check and then bishop c1. You play queen b5 check, and then this is mate. And if you play king c1, then this is mate. So it's funny, like black's threats are obvious in this position. Black's threatening queen d1 mate, but white doesn't have a good defense. There's nothing white can do to stop the checkmate. So a brilliant victory by Schlechter. Let me see the notation. It says analysis. So in the game, according to it's not clear what actually happened, but it looks like this happened and white resigned. And then the analysis is here. Okay, which is checkmate. So that was one of Schlechter's most exciting games, one of his most brilliant games. I'm not sure if it was the most brilliant. I'll let you guys decide once we see the last game. That game was sort of a fun game. It wasn't played in a tournament. It was a casual game. So he casually gave all his pieces away and casually checkmated his opponent. So really nice game by Schlechter, showing how strong he was. Supposed to have notation off, but it's not working. Okay, here it was played in 1907 at the Trebitsch Memorial. There were 3 Trebitsch Memorials that Schlechter played in, and he won all 3. This is against Géza Maróczy. Maróczy was a very strong player, top 20 in the world, maybe top 10. And good battle with Schlechter. Schlechter has white. And they transpose into this line that I play with white. So I've had this position with white several times. Usually we get all of our knights and pawns out, and then we play a3 in the symmetrical position. And I've also had black in this position as well. So I've had both sides of this position. Black played d takes c, and this just transposes to a queen's gambit accepted. Now, some of you don't believe me. You're like, How's this a queen's gambit accepted? What are you talking about? Okay, let's go back. So queen's gambit accepted. This is one of the main lines. And there you go. And that's position that we got in the game just by transposition. So there's a lot of ways to get there. And they took this way, which I've never done, but I've had this position. I've had this position too from both move orders. Black played a6. Black wants to play b5. Schlechter says, go right ahead. Maróczy says, thank you. They were very polite back in the day. 1907. Bishop b7. Now you have a symmetrical pawn structure. And now we have a symmetrical position, except white castled and black didn't. So if black castles, completely symmetrical position. And it's white's turn to move after castles. So you would assume white has some advantage, not much. But Maróczy didn't want symmetrical. He wanted to do his own thing. So he played knight e5, attacking all of white's pieces. White traded. And instead of playing a boring move like I would do, Schlechter played f4, very aggressive. Bishop goes back. Queen e2. Rook d1, lining up the rook with the queen. So white's threatening bishop takes h7 check, and then take the queen on d8. So Maróczy played queen e7, and now e4. So it's still a symmetrical kind of pawn structure, except white's moved the kingside pawns up, and that's because black couldn't move the kingside pawns up because black's knight's on f6. So with no knight on f3, which was traded, white could play f4, e4 very quickly. White's going to whip up an attack. Black played e5, blocking the pawns. Knight d5. Now white opens up the bishops, starting an attack against black's king. Rook e8, defending the e-pawn. Takes. Bishop takes h7 check. So it's funny, in the games that I selected for the lecture, Schlechter puts the tactics in lecture. But typically he played sort of a sound, getting an advantage, Karpov and Carlsen-like kind of way. But if his opponents made tactical mistakes, he would punish them. King takes was played, queen check, and bishop takes. And the idea is material's equal now. It looks like black wins a piece, but white has queen f7 check, and then take the bishop, and white's actually 2 pawns ahead with a passed pawn on d5, and black's king isn't so safe either. So instead, black played f6, never play f6, giving the result of the game away. And if I was white, I would move my bishop away because my bishop's attacked, because that's how I play. Okay, and Schlechter said, this Finegold guy, he keeps saying I'm a boring, positional, strategical player, even after the last game I showed you where he sacked all his pieces. So he said, I'm going to do it again until Finegold apologizes. Bishop takes f6, opening up the black king. He says, thanks for the free piece. Rook d3, white wants to play rook g3 check. And to be perfectly frank, these pieces are not defending the black king, and these pieces are attacking the black king. And we even got rid of one of black's spite checks. Can't even check anymore. Queen h7, let's trade queens. Schlechter says no thanks. And now, in this position, Schlechter actually missed a quicker win than he played, even though he won in 2 moves. How do you win in 2 moves? You missed a quicker win. Okay, Schlechter could have actually traded queens here. Takes, rook f4, threatening rook h4 checkmate. And the truth hurts. Black can give some spite checks, but rook h4 mate's coming. So Schlechter could have won that way. That would have been nice. Schlechter decided to play queen f3 instead. Now, white is threatening rook h3, and even better than rook h3, that's possible, queen takes f6 check. That is better than rook h3, because that wins the queen and mates, and wins the pawn. Okay, so Maróczy didn't like the look of queen takes f6 check or rook h3, so he stopped them both, played queen f7, defended his pawn, and now rook h3 doesn't win his queen. And now Schlechter played a really nice finishing move, after which Maróczy resigned. Queen g4, threatening rook h3 check. And Maróczy found the only defense to rook h3 check, he resigned. If he doesn't resign, white can pre-move rook h3, although I guess black could play here. And pre-moving probably didn't exist in 1907. So in this position, there's no defense to rook h3 check, so Maróczy resigned. So nice tactical game again from Schlechter. Bishop takes h7 check, bishop takes f6, opened up the black king, and black never moved the rook off of a8. The bishop on b7 has been, whoops, that's the drunken bishop. Bishop on b7 has been blocked the whole game, never got anything active. And as a consequence, black's king got in a lot of trouble, and eventually black got checkmated. Great game by Schlechter, beating Super GM. Okay, another famous player Schlechter played was Georg Marco. We'll call him George. This was played in Monte Carlo in 1904. Man, every time I look at a Schlechter game, he's in this country and this city and this world capital, and then he died penniless. Man, the truth hurts. Okay, Schlechter has white. He's playing Marco. Not Polo, but Marco. Okay, and they got a queen's gambit. Looks like I'm playing white. Okay, so far I'm happy. I've played rook c1. I've never played c5, but I like c5. I'll start playing it. Schlechter gets the positional bind, tries to get more space against Marco. b5, I've never seen a move like that before. b4. White obviously has more space on the queen side. Black is very cramped. Black's trying to trade pieces to relieve the cramped nature of his position. Makes sense. Knight e5 with a discovered attack on the knight and a regular attack on the pawn on c6. So black played normal move. And now, if I was playing a blitz game, I would take the knight on e5 relatively quickly. And you can't take the knight on h5 because knight takes d3 and black's up a piece. And yet, Schlechter found a third move, which is better than all those moves, especially better than losing a piece. He said, remember that last game where I played bishop takes h7 check, even though it was played after this game? He said, I'm going to do it again. It was the first time anybody ever did again. Bishop takes h7 check. So the idea is if you take, I take this knight with check, then I take this knight, white's up a pawn, and white has a better minor piece. Black's bishop is not good. So he played king f8, queen takes h5, knight c4. White's a pawn ahead, but black has excellent knight on c4, getting counterplay against white's queen side, or so he thought. Bishop d3, and bishop d3 removes the bishop away from h7, so now white's threatening queen h8 checkmate, and g6 doesn't stop it. It's still checkmate. So black played queen f6. Now he's not getting checkmated. And now black is threatening the a3 pawn, getting his pawn back. So he takes the knight. Oh, give me the knight. Takes back. He doesn't want to take with the d pawn because then my knight can hop into d6. And white also has a nice center here. White can start playing rook d1, e4, or this rook to d1, f4, e4. So taking with the b pawn makes the most sense. b5, white wants to get a passed pawn. He says, after takes, I have a passed c pawn. Your c pawn is blockaded, and my knight can go to d6 again, and I'm currently threatening knight c7, forking the rooks. So black didn't take that b pawn. Black played bishop d7, stopping the white knight from coming in. Takes on c6. It's also tempting to play b6. Very tempting. But he took and played rook b1, taking over the b file. g6, attacking the queen. Check. The rook comes down the b file. Queen h3. Rook b1. White won on the king's side. White has more space in the center and queen's side, and now white's winning down the b file. Rook h8, attacking the queen. Queen f3. f5. Now, white is playing a positional masterpiece, a strategical masterpiece. The bishop on c6 is blockaded. Black's a pawn down. Black's king is exposed. And Schlechter is still mad at me because I keep saying what a genius Schlechter is at strategical chess, which this game has shown. White's strategically winning. White has the better minor piece. White's rooks are controlling the only open file on the board. White's king is safer than black's king. And Schlechter says, stop saying I'm a strategical player. Stop saying I'm a positional player. Rook takes c6. And all I can say to Schlechter is, always sacrifice the exchange. And he totally blasts through Marco's position. Knight takes d5. Amazing. So the idea is, if you take this, I play rook b6 check, and queen takes d5, and there's no way this king is not getting mated. We're threatening queen c6 check, which wins, queen d6 check, which wins, rook b7 check, which wins, queen b7 check wins, and queen f7 check wins. There's nothing for black to do. Black's going to get mated in 3 or 4 moves. So he didn't take the knight on d5. He played rook a b8, stopping white's rook from dominating. Knight f4 check. So if the king goes to c7, then we can check, fork the king and queen. We can't take the queen because we get mated, but eventually we can take the queen, and then black has to resign because if the king goes here, we have rook takes rook check, and then take the queen. And if the king goes here, we take the queen with check. So black played the obvious move, king d7, and then John Nunn had a field day because John Nunn, as far as I know, invented the term collinear move. That's exactly what white did here. And when white sacrificed on c6, he must have seen this position and he knew what move he was going to play. It's a crushing move for white. Rook b7 check, moving towards the opponent's rook, but stopping before we get there. And that's just completely winning. If the king goes to c8, you get checkmated. If the king goes to d8, you lose all of your rooks. King goes to e8 is the same. Also, if king d8, if you don't want to win both rooks, you can play knight takes e6 check, which leads to checkmate next move. The point is everything wins. So you have to take the rook. That's forced. Now, you can't play king d8 because knight takes wins the queen. So you have to play king e8. Then white played c6. And now white's threatening everything. I don't see a move that he's not threatening. He's threatening queen d7. Let's make a random move for black. He's threatening queen d7 check, knight e6 check. Then you can take the queen if you're a masochist, or you can play queen g7 mate if you just want to end the game. So that's a big threat after c6. And I'm also threatening c7, c8. For example, queen d8 stops queen d7 check, but then c7 is even stronger and wins all of black's pieces and mates him. And probably other moves win, like knight takes e6. I'm sure that also wins. But okay, c7 is lights out. So after c6, black actually resigned. If I was black, I would have castled, but my opponent might have called me on it. The engine calls me on it. It says, no, you can't castle. You moved your king about 10 times. So white sacrificed the exchange. White broke through in the center and the queen side. White's queening his c-pawn, and white has a mating attack against black's king also. Black's rook on h8, it actually castled, and then he uncastled. So black made a lot of moves with these two pieces. Okay, that was a very nice game against strong player. Marco was a good player. Okay, the last game is the most exciting, unless you think game 2 was the most exciting. And Schlechter was black. Flip board. And he was playing Elfried, or maybe Fried, or maybe he's a pitcher for the Atlanta Braves. I'm not sure. Schlechter's black. This game was played in Vienna in 1894. And the game doesn't last very long, but it's very exciting. And I only decided to put this game at the end because it's one of those games that you see in the 1800s that you don't see nowadays. So f4, and it's the fried bird, because fried is white. e5, as a vegan, I shouldn't say that. Takes. Now, it's funny, he played d6, but knight c6 is actually the Schlechter variation, named after Schlechter. And I play knight c6 when I have black in this position. The idea is d4 is a blunder because of queen check, and I take the pawn. And white's pawn structure is quite poor. So he played d6, which is the normal move. Takes, takes. Now white's being threatened with mate. Queen h4 check is going to be mate. For example, a3, terrible, check. Now you have to have some style points. You have to sacrifice your queen and then take with checkmate. If you don't want style points, then you can just take with the bishop and mate with the queen. Terrible. No style. Okay, so white always plays the same move here. Knight f3, stopping queen h4 check. Knight f6. Typically nowadays people play g5 and try to play g4. That's the standard way of playing. d4. Schlechter just wants to develop his pieces and have compensation for a pawn. Finally gets to play g5. Knight e4. Very aggressive play by black. g4. Bishop h4 attacking the black queen. And in this position, if I was playing a blitz game, I'd probably sack my queen, but I would just be kidding. I'm like, well, I'll sack my queen. It's fun. It's blitz chess. It's bullet chess. You know, why not? But Schlechter actually calculated and figured out sacking the queen was actually the correct move. Also, Schlechter knew that in about 130, 140 years, I would be lecturing on this game, 130 years, and he has to sack his queen if he wants this game included in the lecture. So I wonder if Schlechter was thinking that. Okay, well, white has to capture the queen because white's down a piece and white's bishop is hanging. So didn't attack the queen not to take it. Then f2 check. White has one legal move. King e2. Black plays the obvious skewer. Bishop g4 check. Once again, white has one legal move. So when you have one legal move, I recommend it. King d3. Now, if I was playing a blitz game, I'd probably take the queen. And then I don't know what's going on because this bishop's attacked, this knight's attacked. Currently, black would be up a piece if he takes the queen. Black has 4 pieces, and white only has 3 minor pieces. So this might win. This might be winning for black. Yeah, maybe. Okay, but Schlechter didn't sack his queen and take his queen back. Who would do that? He played knight b4 check, and he's going after the white king. Now in this position, The correct move is king to c4. Now, again, if I was black, I would take the queen, and black's up a piece, and black's threatening the bishop. And white's king is, not so good. You get checkmated. Okay, and it's possible that black can play for more. I'm not sure. Black could play bishop e6 check. I don't believe that because of d5. Yeah, I think after king c4, black would just take the queen and black would win. And then the game would be sort of boring because black sacrificed his queen, and then 3 moves later he won his queen back and he's a piece up. That's that's exciting, but it's not exciting as the game. In the game, Fried got his king fried. He played king takes e4. That's not a good move. And hopefully you at home watching the lecture live or watching on YouTube later, hopefully you guys can find the correct move here for black, which Schlechter did. So if you're watching at home, pause the video if you haven't found it yet and try to find the winning move for black. Okay, I'm sure that 90% of you found it. The answer is checkmate in 1. And as a chess coach, when my students have checkmate in 1, I recommend it. That's good coaching. f5 checkmate. Black has 2 f pawns, 1 for each of you. First he plays f2 check, then he plays f5 mate. I don't know if I've seen that before. f2 check followed by f5 mate. So really nice miniature from Schlechter. I don't know if you like that game better or game 2. They're in the same ilk. And, his opponents I hadn't heard of in those games. So he was having a little fun, a little sacrifice, a little checkmate, having some fun beating up on people who aren't as famous as Marco and Maróczy. Then he's got to be serious. So Schlechter probably should have been world champion. He died a little too young at 44. He was one of the top 5-10 players in the world for many years, and sort of a forgotten player because he never won that match against Lasker. And we still don't know today if he had to win by 2, which would make more sense as to why he lost the last game instead of drawing and winning the match. I'm Grandmaster Ben Finegold. Thanks for watching our weekly lecture on Carl Schlechter. Please like and subscribe and leave a comment. Helps the channel out tremendously. And if you want to sponsor a lecture, contact Karen. Thanks again to our sponsor, Anonymous. Anonymous sponsors a lot of lectures. And I'll see you next week with more weekly lectures. Thanks for watching, everybody. Bye, everyone.